any of my questions? Do you understand this right?
What was his response?
His response was yes, and he was asked to place his initials here by the yes. Should you talk to me, anything which you might say may be introduced into evidence in court against you, understand? Again, he indicated yes, placing his initials by the yes. Number 3, if you want a lawyer to be present during questioning at this time or any time hereafter, you are entitled to have a lawyer present. You understand this right? Again, he placed his initials by the yes. If you cannot afford to pay for a lawyer, one will be provided for you at no cost if you want one. Do you understand this right? Yes again, and his initials are placed by the yes. Knowing these rights, are you now willing to answer my questions without having the lawyer present? And he placed his initials by the yes blank.
So he actually was advised of these rights not once but twice by
Yes.
2 different officers.
And he had been advised these rights on the previous day also.
All right. Did he express any hesitancy in speaking to you about this matter?
None whatsoever.
All right. And at any time prior to speaking to him about this matter, did you use any coercion or any force?
No.
Did the defendant at any time relate to you that he had been threatened or intimidated by anyone into getting him to speak to you?
No.
Did you notice when you spoke to the defendant, how close were you to him when you spoke to him?
Very close, across a small table in a small interview room.
Distance between you and I?
Yes.
Did you notice any injuries on his body, his face, arms, legs, other than the cuts that he had when he came in?
No, other than I was going to mention the cuts, but since you said other than the cuts, no. He had cuts on his hands, yes. But other than that, no injuries, no.
Okay. And as far as bruising or anything of that nature?
No.
And he never made any comment to you about anyone threatening him or striking him or hurting him in any way?
No. None.
When you came into the room to speak to him just prior to taking the statement from him, was he crying? Did he appear upset?
No.
Okay. Now, after you executed the Miranda form, did you ask for a stenographer to come to type down what he said in the fashion that the court ordered doing today?
This would have been sometime later after the pre-interview. We talked for several hours during what's known as a pre-interview so that I could understand more what his version of the events would be. But yes, eventually after the pre-interview, I took a formal confession from him.
Okay. Now, with regards to comments that the defendant made to you during the pre-interview, what, if anything, did he tell you to do before he sat down to speak to you?
Well, initially, he told me that he had nothing to do with the murder of Mr. Gonzalez.
Okay.
It was at that point that I explained to him the enormous evidence that we could develop against him. I asked him if he watched shows like CSI, and he said that he did. And I explained to him that we had a lot of evidence, forensic evidence, that we could amass against him. For example, fingerprints, DNA, forensic evidence concerning the knives, cut marks, tool marks, etc. I went into a lengthy dissertation of how much evidence that we could accumulate and prove that he was involved in this. And after a short time, he became very pensive, very thoughtful, and he said to me, do you go to church? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, do you take your family to church? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, I think you're a holy person. I'm going to tell you everything. I'm going to tell you I killed him. And I said, okay. I know you did. I think you did, Lazaro, but I want to know more. He says, I'll tell you more, but you have to do me this favor. And I said, what is that? He says, you have to listen to everything I tell you. I said, certainly. He said, before we get started, I need a cigarette. I said, okay. So I exited the interview room. I got a cigarette from one of the other detectives, and I gave it to him. And it was at this point that he started telling me about how he encountered the victim and how he stabbed the victim.
Now, what, if anything, did he say about being handcuffed before he spoke to you?
This was sometime later. While we were talking about his background, he said to me, I'm really a bad person. I need to be shackled. He got somewhat agitated. He says, you need to handcuff me. I've done so many bad things in my life, you need to handcuff me. And he said, Sarge, I'm telling you right now, if you don't get me for this, I'm going to do it again. So handcuff me. He said, all right. I said, okay, I'll handcuff you. So I exited the room again, and I had a hard time finding some handcuffs. I was about to, I went back into the room, and I said, Lazaro, I can't find any handcuffs. Do you really need this to be done? He says, absolutely, I need to be handcuffed. So I finally, there was a skeleton crew because it was a holiday at the time, so I had a hard time finding some handcuffs. I was about to go down to my car where I knew had some in the trunk, but one of the other detectives had some handcuffs, so I re-entered the room and I said, okay, I'm going to put the handcuffs on you. He said, no, in the back. I have to be shackled in the back. So I handcuffed him in the back. And then he sat down and continued with his narrative and began telling me more about what happened. At some point, he asked if he could utilize a pen and paper. He says, I feel much more at ease when I draw. It takes the tension away. I said, okay. So I got a piece of paper and a felt tip pen and actually took the handcuffs from back and placed them in front, and he began drawing as he began talking to me.
What, if anything, did he say to you about human flesh and eating it?
Among many other things he told me, one of the things he said was that he had developed an urge to eat human flesh. It was overpowering. He had stopped that urge. He said, and one of the things he did to curb that urge to eat human flesh, he would drink the blood of his girlfriend when she was menstruating. That was what he would use to curb his urges to eat flesh, but they were becoming uncontrollable.
Now, after he told you that, did you give him pen and paper so that he could draw if he wanted to?
Yes, during the interview, he drew and looked at me and talked to me, then drew other designs on the paper, other drawings.
So you previously marked the state 1I for identification. You recognize the items depicted in this diagram.
I do.
And what are
They're the drawings that he made that evening.
while you were taking the statement?
While I was taking the verbal pre-interview statement, yes.
Did you tell him what to draw?
No, not at all.
Did anyone else tell him what to draw?
No.
These were his own drawings?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, Your Honor, State has an application to admit 1I evidence.
Any objections?
Yeah, I object.
Okay, what's been allowed in evidence over this objection?
Well, I become states 13.
Before we go through the statement, if we could, let's just take a look at the 7 drawings that are depicted in this exhibit in evidence. What's number 1?
I'm not sure what that is. I really don't know. I mean, he explained to me all of the drawings, but I don't remember what he explained on that drawing or the second one. I'm really not sure what the second one is.
Okay, some words written here, Lagumbe, Eshubai, and Aloha. He wrote those words?
Yes, he did. He
Did you
made
tell
those
him?
drawings. Yes. No, I didn't help him at all. I have no idea what those words are.
Did you tell him how to spell the words?
No.
Number 3.
The third one he told me was the victim. He says that was the victim and how he looked in the bathtub. As you can see, the leg is severed, and that's the bathtub, and that's the faucet, and that's how the victim was placed in the bathtub when he poured the hot water on the victim. He also told me that he did many things to the victim's body. He shaved the victim's eyebrows with a Bic shaver. He used Dawn detergent that he sprayed up the victim's nose and in the ears. He used Dawn detergent to wash the body. He washed the victim's hair, he told me.
And with regards to the bathtub, did you notice any indication in the bathtub in the defendant's apartment that there may be tool marks or scrape marks from a knife?
Later on I did. On the edge of the bathtub, you can see on the very edge, you can see the cut marks from a knife. And he told me that's where he cut the victim's fingers off. He laid the victim's hand over the edge of the tub, and that's where he cut the fingers and thumbs off, and that coincided with what I saw at the crime scene.
Okay. Number 5. Did you
Well,
witness him draw
number
that?
4, we haven't talked about number.
Well, we're going to go back.
Okay, I see. All right, number 5 was just a knife. He just said that was some type of knife that he drew. And number 7, he said that was the knife. This is the knife I used to kill the victim and cut the victim or stab the victim.
We have a saw implement in evidence similar to that you looked at earlier.
Well, actually, that saw is what was used to cut the victim's fingers and feet. But this knife was his favorite knife. He said he had made many sacrifices with this knife. And this was the knife that was used to actually stab the victim, the original stabbing.
And that was later recovered, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And let me show you what was previously marked as 1C. Take a look at 1C and tell me what you know about it.
That is the knife that he took us to when we took him on location and said that was the knife he used to stab the victim, and that's supposedly the knife that's depicted in that picture.
Okay. At this time, Your Honor, State has an application to admit 1C into evidence.
Any objections?
Yes, I object.
Okay, what's been allowed in evidence over defense?
1C becomes states 14.
And for he indicated that this knife was the knife that he did what?
Stabbed the victim.
Now, number 4. We haven't talked about number 4 yet. What's that?
Early on in this statement, when he began giving me his verbal statement, he attributed much of he said he had some bizarre behavior that he exhibited throughout his life. And he attributed much of this bizarre behavior to the demonic possession of him by his dead uncle, Jose Aguilar, who he called Candelo. He said, this is Candelo. This is his rendering of Candelo. This is what Candelo looks like to him when Candelo's image comes to him. He called it an entity, his word, not mine. He said, the entity of Candelo enters my body and takes over my body. He said that his uncle, Jose Aguilar, was murdered, and that ever since that murder, his body or his spirit or his demonic spirit takes over him.
All right. Now, the last photograph or drawing that we have is number 6. Did he draw this as well?
Yes.
And what do we have here?
Looks like an inverted cross, crucifix,
And here we have,
pentagram.
now, is that in any way similar to the items that were drawn on the wall in his apartment?
Yeah, with where it says Lucifer, Beelzebub, and Astaroth. It's an inverted cross, and then you have the pentagram on top, very similar.
Similar to the drawing that you actually witnessed the defendant?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now, at this point, what else does he tell you about his involvement in this homicide?
He admits that he killed the victim. He said that he confronted the victim outside of his trailer, that he told the victim to leave. The victim did not. They got in a little bit of an argument, and he said that Candelo gave him the sensation that there was a knife in his pocket. Candelo actually told him to go for the knife. He said he pulled the knife out and he stabbed the victim in the stomach with the knife. He said the victim looked at him surprised, incredulous, and fell to the ground and actually fell to his knees and threw up. And he said he threw up rice and beans and blood onto the pavement in front of his trailer. He said he then stabbed him several more times with the knife. And at Candelo's insistence, he pulled the victim into his trailer to hide the victim's body. And as he did, he looked around to see if there was anyone watching. He said there was a man on his porch on one of the trailers, several trailers down, that may have seen it. He also saw a Metro-Dade, a Miami-Dade police car drive by, but he didn't think that the police officer saw anything because the police officer was looking straight ahead. He said that he dragged the body into his apartment or his trailer, and as he did, he saw a trail of blood leading from where the victim had thrown up into the inside of the trailer. As he dropped the victim inside of his trailer, inside the front door, he shut the front door and he realized the victim was still alive. Oh, he also said when the victim threw up that he whispered something to him. The victim whispered something very low, but he couldn't understand what the victim said to him.
What did he say he did once he got the victim inside and realized that he was still alive?
He said then he stabbed him in the chest a final time, and he actually heard the air ooze out of the victim's lung, or be forced out of the victim's lung. He then took the hatchet that we saw in one of those previous pictures, and he said he used a hatchet to beat him in the head until his brains came out of his head.
I want to show you what we previously marked as State's Exhibit 1D for identification. Take a look at that and tell me if you can recognize this item.
That's the hatchet that was in the cauldron, yes.
And is this the hatchet he said he used to smash the head of the deceased?
Yes, it is.
This time around, the state has an application to admit this item into evidence.
Any objections?
Object.
Just going to rule the objections out as evidence.
When it becomes states 15.
Of course, permission to publish it to the jury.
Permission is granted.
All right, what else did he say to you?
He said that in his frenzy of stabbing the victim, that because he stabbed him continuously, that the victim's blood came up on the knife blade and on the handle of the blade, and the blade became, and the knife handle became very oily and slippery because of the slippery blood, and that his hand slipped down onto the knife, and he cut himself several times. He also noticed that in his frenzy that he had cut himself on the leg while trying to stab the victim.
And did there come a time when the stenographer arrived and you typed down, or she typed down, what was said?
Yes.
And you reviewed that statement?
Yes.
And is it accurate with regards to what the defendant said to you during the course of the interview?
Yes, it is.
All right, I want to show you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 1Z. Recognize that?
Yes.
Okay, and what is it?
This is the confession that Mr. Galindo gave to me with the stenographer present.
And you reviewed that statement, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and does that statement fairly and accurately depict or relate the information as was related to you by the defendant?
Yes, it does.
This time around, the state has an application to admit this item into evidence and to publish it to the jury by way of reading between the two of us.
Any objections, Mr. Galindo?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go over the objection. Allow this evidence.
1Z becomes state 16.
All right, now what I'm going to ask you to do, Sergeant, is in the copy that you
I have one, yes.
Well,
Or do you want to use this one? Okay.
Yeah, let's use this one.
Okay.
That's the official one in evidence. I'm going to ask you to read the portions where you spoke, and then I'm going to read the portions where the defendant spoke. Before we do that, I'd like to pass out copies to the jury to follow along.
Or grant permission to do that.
Hi, I'm so sorry. There you go. Okay. All right. Do you need that desk space on you?
Yeah, that would help. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and read the introduction on the front page? You can just tell us a sworn statement and what's the date and time.
It's the investigation of the homicide of Argelio Gonzalez, white male, 42, whose body was found at Northwest 50th Street and Northwest 23rd Avenue at approximately 5:15 p.m. on Sunday, July 2nd, 2000. It says a sworn statement of Lazaro Galindo taken before Elizabeth D. Batchelor, court reporter, notary public in the state of Florida at large at Miami-Dade Police Department Headquarters Complex, 9105 Northwest 25th Street, Miami-Dade, Florida, on Tuesday, July 4, 2000, commencing at 10:15 p.m. and concluding at 11 p.m. Appearances are myself, Anthony Monheim, Sergeant, Miami-Dade Police Department Homicide Bureau. It then says, thereupon Lazaro Galindo, having first been duly sworn, was examined and testified upon his oath as follows.
You read the questions, I'll read the answers.
Okay. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Lazaro Alberto Galindo,
How old are you, Lazaro?
19,
And your date of birth?
9680,
What's your address?
3200 Northwest 79th Street, Lot A, 144.
And that's a trailer park, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know the name of the trailer park?
No, I don't, sir.
What's the phone number at your trailer?
305-694-8979.
And you have another phone number where you can be reached. Your mother's phone number?
Yes, my mother's phone number is 305-637-4423.
Lazaro, I'm going to show you a Miranda warning form that you saw earlier this evening that you signed. I'm going to go over it again with you, and I'm going to read the form in its entirety. After each write, I'm going to ask you if you understand. So as I read, if you could just answer when I ask you if you understand the right, okay?
Okay.
Before you're asked any questions, you must understand the following rights. You have a right to remain silent, and you do not have to talk to me if you do not wish to do so. You do not have to answer any of my questions. Do you understand that right?
Yes, sir.
Should you talk to me, anything which you might say may be introduced in evidence in court against you. Do you understand?
Yes.
If you want a lawyer to be present during questioning at this time or any time hereafter, you're entitled to have a lawyer present. Do you understand that right?
Yes.
If you cannot afford to pay for a lawyer, one will be provided for you at no cost if you want one. Do you understand that right?
Yes.
Knowing these rights, are you now willing to answer my questions without having a lawyer present?
Yes.
And show you this form. Is this your signature that you placed at the bottom?
Yes.
And this is the date and the time that you placed correct.
Yes.
Lazaro, directing your attention to Friday, which would be June 30th, 2000, the evening hours, did you come in contact with victim Argelio Gonzalez?
Yes.
And showing you a picture of Mr. Gonzalez, is this the victim that you came in contact with?
Yes.
How did you come in contact with him on that evening?
Well, I told this man several times not to come around my house.
You had prior confrontations with him?
Yes.
How many?
We'll say about 3.
And what type of confrontations were they, physical or verbal?
Verbal.
And what were they over? What were the confrontations over?
Over petty things like I can't support Yaslin Gonzalez.
Yaslin Gonzalez is the victim's former girlfriend, is that correct?
Was.
Former.
Yes.
And you're her present boyfriend.
Yes.
And the discussions or confrontations that you had with the victim were because of Yaslin.
Yes.
So going back to Friday, you came in contact with the victim where? Where was that?
In front of my house.
In front of your trailer at the trailer park.
In front of my trailer.
Was the victim walking on foot or was he driving?
He was driving, sir.
What kind of car was he driving?
Cadillac.
Could you describe it for me?
It was a great Cadillac.
Do you know the approximate year?
I don't know, sir.
Older, newer?
Older.
Would you say 80s or 90s?
80s.
Light gray, dark gray?
Light gray.
Do you know the color of the interior?
No, sir.
Do you know the model of the car?
Cadillac.
But I mean, do you know if it's a Coupe de Ville or Seville?
Don't know, sir.
When he approached your house, did he say anything to you?
Yes, he did, sir.
Was he still seated in the vehicle when he first came to your house?
Yes.
And what did he say?
He said he wanted to speak to me.
And what did you say?
I said, I told him several times not to come around my house, to please leave.
And then what happened?
He said, why should I leave if the street's not yours?
Okay, and what did you do then?
After that, sir, I approached the vehicle and I told him, can you please leave, sir?
And then what happened?
Then he said, I already feel that we're going to have problems.
Did there come a point when you started crying while he was there?
Yes, sir.
What happened?
When he got out of the car, he put the car in park, he got out, I approached him, crying, and told him to please leave.
Why were you crying, Lazaro?
Because I already knew what was going to happen, due to the fact that I had already told him several times to leave.
Okay, and then what happened?
After that, he approached me, reaching behind his back as though he was pulling out some type of weapon.
And what did you do?
I felt a sensation in my pocket. I put my hand inside my pocket, whipped out my knife, and I stabbed him several times.
What type of knife was that in your pocket?
Switchblade.
Would you tell me what color it was?
It has a brown wooden knob,
How long a blade would you estimate that it has?
about 8 inches.
And where did you stab him?
First, I went for the stomach.
You stabbed him in the stomach first.
Yes.
And then how many other times did you stab him?
I stabbed him several times in the face and in the chest area.
While you were stabbing him, this was occurring in front of your trailer, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did anyone witness this stabbing taking place?
I believe I took a glimpse to my side, and I seen the man on the corner.
Could you describe him? Is he an older or younger man?
He's an older man.
And he lives in a trailer on the corner, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You also mentioned to me earlier that you saw a vehicle drive by. What type of vehicle was that?
It was a Metro Dade police car.
And did the officer driving the car look in your direction while the stabbing was occurring?
No. It was as though he was stiff.
He was driving straight ahead.
Straight ahead.
What happened next after you stabbed the victim? You said you stabbed him in the face and in the chest several times. What happened next?
Well, I was falling in and out of consciousness. He went towards me, and he was leaving at the same time, as though he was realizing what was happening to him. He went towards the pavement where the red Grand Marquis was parked at.
Who owns the Grand Marquis?
Supposedly it's Jocelyn Gonzalez.
And that's her car, and she loaned it to you, correct?
She never loans her car.
Why were you driving her car?
It was part of my plan.
So you had a plan. Prior to this occurring, you had a plan?
Can you repeat that?
Did you have a plan to do this to the victim, to kill the victim, prior to him coming to your apartment or to your trailer?
No, the plan was being released by the entity Jose Aguilar.
Who is that?
That's my deceased uncle.
Okay, and explain to me as simply as you can what you mean by was being released.
He was manifesting himself inside of me. I was losing and coming back into consciousness, blacking out.
Okay, and what do you call this person?
Candelo, Candelo.
When the victim fell in front of your trailer after being stabbed, did he throw up anything?
I believe he did after he looked up at me and whispered some words.
What did he say to you?
I didn't catch what he said.
What did he throw up?
It looked like blood, rice and beans and meat.
What did you do then?
Then I grabbed him, brought him inside my house.
How did you grab him?
By his arms.
Did you drag him?
Yes, sir.
You brought him into your house, and he was going, as he was going into the house, did you notice anything on the sidewalk or on the porch up to your house?
Yes, sir. There was a long blood trail from the pavement up to inside my house.
As you brought him into the house, where did you place him?
I put him inside of my house on the front living room. I closed the door, and then I dragged him inside the bathtub.
And he was in the living room. As he was in the living room, did anything happen in the living room? Did there come a time when he gasped?
Yes, he gasped for air at that time. I was back into conscious, realizing what happened. I see him breathing. I recognize his face, so I stabbed him in his right lung, and he let out a long, long, long breath.
Did you do anything else with other types of weapons?
Yes, sir. I grabbed an axe, and I beat his brains out.
And where is that axe located? Where did you obtain it from?
It's located on a pot that has nothing but metal inside of it. Metal weapons.
And what is that pot used for?
It's used for Santeria.
What did you do with the axe after you hit the victim with it?
Well, I went back into the blackout scene. I woke back up, and I caught myself cutting the deceased man. I caught myself cutting him.
Where were you cutting him?
I was cutting his knee.
Why were you doing that?
I have no idea, sir.
As you were cutting his knee, was there a purpose for doing that? Was there a reason why you were cutting one particular leg?
Yes, the entity that speaks to me was telling me to do so.
This is Candelo.
Candelo.
He was telling you to do that. And why was he telling you to cut off the leg?
I have no idea, sir.
Does the victim have a tattoo on that leg, that particular leg?
Yes, he does, sir.
And is it safe to say that the reason for cutting off the leg was to remove the tattoo from the body?
You can say so.
Now, when this cutting was occurring, was that in the living room, or have we missed a portion here where the victim was taken into the bathroom? I believe you said.
All the cutting scene took place in the bathroom when I woke up and realized what was really going on.
Tell me what happened after you struck the victim with the axe in the head. Then what happened?
After that, I realized and recognized his face and wondered what he was doing inside of my house. Then I remembered that I had told him several times to leave, and I was crying. Then I dragged him inside the bathtub. I let the water run on him several hours, hot water. I was told by Candelo to do so.
You allowed the hot water from the shower to cover him for several hours.
Yes, sir. I was told this would cause the meat to cook and the blood to stop pouring.
And who told you that?
Candelo?
And Candelo is this other person inside of you,
Yes, sir.
Jose Aguilar,
Yes, sir.
your deceased uncle.
Yes, sir.
And you believe that your dead uncle manifests himself inside of you as Candelo.
Yes, sir.
Do you know when you stabbed the victim that it is wrong to do that?
Yes.
And did you know that when you struck him, or that when you struck him into the, it shouldn't be struck, it should be, I don't know what that is, when you struck him into the bathroom, that it was wrong to dispose of his body in the manner that you did?
Yes.
What happened next?
When I woke up out of my conscious once again, which I was coming in and out, I realized what he had done.
As you were spraying the victim with the water from the shower, did you do anything else with any soap or detergent?
No, sir. I ran right outside and took his Cadillac.
And what did you do with the Cadillac?
I took it to a dark place.
Where was that, do you think?
It was on 61st Street. I don't recall.
And what did you do with it there?
I left it there
For what purpose?
for the purpose of that being a bad neighborhood. Somebody would take the car.
You felt that someone would steal that car.
That's right, sir.
How did you get back home?
I walked.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, you left the victim in the tub while the hot water running, with the hot water running.
That's right, sir.
And while the water was running for, you said, several hours, you disposed of the victim's vehicle down on 61st Street and then came back. When you came back, was the water still running?
Yes, sir.
And then what did you do?
there until I finally chopped it all off. Then I cut off his fingers.
What did you use to cut his knee off?
I used a dull steak saw.
Is it the same steak saw that was on the counter in your kitchen that we impounded on Sunday?
Yes, sir.
And then what did you do? You said you cut his knee off, and what else?
I cut his fingers. And I was told several times by Candello to shave his eyebrows and his mustache.
And did you do that?
Yes, sir.
What did you use to shave his eyebrows and his mustache?
A razor.
A razor from your bathroom?
That's right, sir.
Is that razor still there?
I believe it's not, sir.
Did there come a time when you washed the body, and when did that happen, if it did?
Well, after I finished cutting him up and doing what I was told to do, I was told to place Dawn dishwashing liquid on all the wounds on every part of his body, inside the nose, inside the mouth, and wash his hair.
And when you say you were told to do this, again, who told you to do this?
Candello,
Going back to the fingers, you mentioned that you used the same utensil to cut off the fingers that you used to cut the leg. How did you cut the fingers off? Where did you place the fingers to cut them off?
I placed them on the corner of the metal tub, and I continued, just saw them off.
How many were cut off?
10.
All 8 fingers and 2 thumbs were cut off.
That's right, sir.
And what did you do with those?
Well, sir, I had all the body parts inside the tub. I let, once again, the water run to wash him up with some soap. Then after that, sir, I continued to black out. And then I was caught again inside the scene. It was like Candello was trying to possess me again. It's like every time I was around this man, this deceased man, Candello would be there again.
Then after you assembled all the body parts, what did you do with the parts and the person, the victim?
Well, I got a bedspread, a thick sheet.
What color was that?
It was pink.
And where did that come from?
Well, mostly every sheet inside my house came from Yasmin's house.
Yoselin Gonzalez's house.
Yes.
And this pink blanket came from her house originally?
Yes, sir.
When did she bring that to your house?
Well, it's been there since I met her.
And how long ago did you meet her?
I've known Yaslin about 2 or 3 months.
Okay, then what happened? What did you do with the blanket?
I laid it on the bathroom floor. I took the deceased man and laid him on top.
Of the blanket.
Yes.
And then what happened?
I blacked out.
And when you came to, what did you do?
I seen the deceased man tied up with a phone cord.
You don't remember tying him up with a telephone cord?
I don't remember.
But you saw the body tied up.
Yes.
How was he tied? Where was he tied?
His hands were tied.
What color was the phone cord?
Gray.
And where was that phone cord from? Do you know?
I don't recall, sir.
Then what did you do?
Then I was told by Candello to write a note saying, quote, Italian Mafia. Sorry, Metro Day, end quote.
And you did, in fact, write that.
Yes, sir.
And where did now you place that note?
At first, I got a rose from the neighbor's house next door.
And what color was that rose?
White?
Did you pick that off a bush? Excuse me, off a bush?
Yes.
Next door to your trailer.
Yes, sir.
And then what did you do with the rose?
I wrapped the paper note around the rose, and I put it in his hand.
And the note said Italian Mafia, sorry, Metro Dade. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then what did you do?
I continued to do as I was told.
Which was what?
I was told to wrap him in the pink sheet.
And did you do that?
That's right, sir.
Did you use anything to bind the pink sheet together?
Yes, sir.
What did you use?
I attached with double knots some white plastic trash bags.
And those plastic bags, those plastic trash bags, are they the same plastic bags that we recovered? The same roll of bags from when we came to your house on Sunday?
Yes, sir.
In other words, the bags that you took to wrap the victim in the blanket were taken from the roll that we removed from your house on Sunday.
That's right, sir.
And where were those plastic bags purchased?
Across the street from the entrance of the trailer park at a gas station.
Do you know the name of the gas station?
No, sir.
When did you purchase those?
The same night?
Was it your intention to purchase those plastic bags to assist you in disposing of the body?
No, sir. I was told by Candello.
Again, Candello told you to do that.
Yes, sir.
And again, Candello is the person that resides inside of you.
Yes, my deceased uncle.
After you tied the victim up in the pink blanket, what did you do then?
I blacked out several times, and I came back into conscious several times, and losing my focus and losing everything.
When you say you blacked out, how long do you think each blackout period occurred?
The longest was about 30 minutes.
So how long did this whole operation take place, would you guess?
From the start to the beginning.
Start to finish.
I'd say about 2 days.
So he was there in your apartment from the time that you stabbed him in front until Sunday when you decided to place the body down at 50th Street. Is that correct?
That's right, sir.
Where did you put the body in to transport it?
I put him inside 2 trash cans, an orange one and a gray one,
Where did you obtain those trash cans?
from the trailer park.
Were they just abandoned trash cans that you just happened to find alongside the road?
Yes, sir, from the abandoned trailers.
And you say one was orange and one was gray.
That's right, sir.
How did you place the victim in those trash cans, if you could explain?
I blacked out. When I woke up again, I was back into consciousness. Both of the trash cans were already set for me.
So the victim was already inside of the trash cans.
That's right, sir.
Were they attached together in any manner?
I don't recall, sir.
Do you remember a white phone cord that was used to tie the 2 garbage cans together? Do you remember seeing that?
I believe I did, sir.
Do you know if you did that?
I had to, sir. I was the only one in the house.
So then what happened?
After that same night, I've been convincing Yoselin to leave in the house because I didn't want her to know anything about what's going on, due to the fact that I knew she had been with him for about a year.
Yoselin is the victim's ex-girlfriend.
Yes, Yoselin Gonzalez.
Go on.
So I didn't want to tell her anything because I had a feeling she was in love with this guy and she wasn't in love with me. She was probably just with me for sex.
And what did you do?
Well, I grabbed the cans, once again blacking out and coming into consciousness.
And what did you do with them? How did you get them out of the house?
I got the car,
Which car?
the red Monte Carlo, the Grand Marquis.
And whose car is that?
It's Yoselin's property.
Yoselin drives that car.
Yes, sir.
And you borrowed that car from her.
No, sir. I took it behind her back.
Oh, you took it behind her back. Did you empty the trunk out of the car?
Yes, sir.
What was in the trunk that you had to empty out?
Several clothes, suitcases.
And what was the purpose for emptying the trunk?
I was really just following orders, sir.
From?
Candello, my deceased uncle.
And once you emptied the trunk, what did you do?
I placed, really, I didn't have to do no type of gesture. I just rolled it into the trunk and closed it.
When you say it, you're referring to the garbage cans containing the victim's body?
Yes, sir.
And you lifted the garbage cans into the trunk
Yes, sir.
of the Grand Marquis.
Yes, sir.
And then what happened?
I closed the trunk, I got inside the car, I blacked out. When I woke back into conscious, this was probably approximately 15 minutes to 20 minutes, I was looking at myself in front of the Brownsville Middle School, a school that I attended.
You just appeared in front of Brownsville Middle School at one point.
Yes, sir.
And what did you do there?
After that, sir, it's like I was in this constant war coming in and out of conscious. Once again, I was blacking out. I see myself in the back of the car. I unloaded the tank,
The garbage cans.
garbage cans. At the same time, in and out of conscious, when I came back into conscious, I went to close the hood and I seen a white bag with a leg. So I threw it out.
And you threw it near the garbage cans. Is that what you're saying? Where did you throw it?
That's right, sir.
Then what did you do? Did you drive the car back to your trailer?
I was in and out of conscious, sir.
I believe you said earlier that the reason you found yourself at Brownsville Middle School was that you attended Brownsville Middle School.
Yes, sir.
What grades did you attend Brownsville Middle School?
Up to 9th grade.
Did there come a time when you found yourself back at the trailer?
Yes, sir.
Does there come a point when you realize you need to clean up the blood trail that comes inside?
That's right, sir.
And what did you do? How did you do that?
I figured out that I was in it so deep now, I was into my own conscience, that it's like the entity that was in me did all these things, and now I'm cleaning up his dirty work. That's exactly what I did with the bleach in the water.
And you cleaned up the blood trail.
Yes, sir.
And did there come a time that you realized that you had cut yourself? And if so, when did you realize that?
I don't even think I realized it, sir.
Well, you received treatments. You have cuts on your hand and leg.
Yes, sir.
How did you receive those cuts?
Yasin came over like she always does every night, and she seen me bleed. She seen blood. She rapidly said, "Let's take you to the hospital." So I went to Hialeah Hospital Emergency
What time was that?
between the hours of 1 and 3.
How did you actually receive those cuts?
I received them while I was stabbing the deceased man to death.
Do you know how you received them? Did your hand slip off the knife, or do you recall what happened?
I don't recall.
You don't remember how you got the cuts on your knee?
Yes, sir. I fell, and when I reached up to grab my knife, I sliced my knee.
With the same knife that you were using to stab the victim.
Yes, sir. That's right, sir.
Did you also clean the bathtub and the bathroom floor?
That's right, sir. With lots of chlorine.
Clorox?
That's right.
And what did you use to clean? Did you use rags?
Yes, sir. I used sheets, towels.
And where are those now, those sheets and towels that you used to clean up?
I don't recall due to the fact that I went to several dumpsters.
What clothes did the victim have on when you dragged him into the house?
Black jeans, black socks, black boots.
Do you remember if he had a shirt on?
He did have a shirt on. It had to be a light color.
What did you do with those?
I put them all inside the tub with all the dirty rags and let the hot water run on.
Did you cut them off of the victim, or how did you get them off?
I cut them.
Where are those clothes now? What eventually happened to those clothes?
They're in the dumpster.
Would you be able to show me where that dumpster is if we leave here?
Yes, sir.
You also said earlier that the fingers were placed in the dumpster. Would you be able to show me where that dumpster is?
Yes, sir.
Would you also be able to show me where you left the victim's car?
Yes, sir.
The knife that was used to stab the victim with, where's that knife now?
It's in the front of a factory.
And what is that with? Is there anything else along with the knife?
Yes. Keys to his Cadillac.
Keys to the victim's Cadillac.
Yes, sir.
Would you be willing to show me where the knife and the keys are when we leave here?
Yes, sir.
What was the reason for disposing of the body as you did and cleaning up the crime scene? Was it to elude the police, to make sure that the police didn't find out what you had done?
No, sir. I was simply following orders due to the fact that I was in so deep by the fault of my entity, which is Candelo.
And Candelo told you to do that.
Yes, sir.
Did Candelo tell you to put the note on the victim's chest?
Yes, sir.
The victim's mouth was also cut open. Why was that done?
Candelo, he said to do it. It's a snitch cut. Make it look like you snitched out the mob.
The mob, meaning the Italian mafia?
Yes, sir.
Relating back to the note which referred to the Italian mafia then.
Yes, sir.
Has Candelo told you to do anything else?
Lately he hasn't. It's almost like he wanted me to do this.
Has he ever told you to harm any other persons? And by that I'm referring to Yaslin's children.
No, sir.
He's never told you to do anything to the children.
No, sir.
After the police came to your house on Sunday, what happened to the Grand Marquis that was used to transport the body?
Candelo told me to get rid of it.
And you did that?
That's right.
What did you do with the car?
I was standing on the corner of the car. Which corner?
Which corner, do you remember?
It was the corner close. It was 32nd Avenue, and it was close to the trailer park.
And what happened there?
A fat drunk guy came to me and said he seen me having car trouble. So he told me, hey, you want to get rid of that piece of shit? And I said, yeah. He offered me $100, and I gave it to him.
What did you tell Yaslin happened to the car?
That it got stolen.
The knife that you used to stab the victim, had you used that for any other types of ritualistic activities before?
Yes, sir.
What did you use it for?
I used it for a deep, dark religion that's called Mayambero Judeo.
And what type of religion is that?
That's mostly dealing with skulls, human skulls, animal skulls, anything belonging to a human being, enslaving spirits to work for you. Some people call it Satanism.
It's referred to commonly as Satanism.
That's right, sir.
And the knife that you favored to use was the knife you used in the stabbing of the victim. Is that correct?
That's right.
I don't have any further questions. Is the statement you've been given true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
To the best of my knowledge.
Has anyone threatened or coerced you to make this statement?
How do I get answer to that?
Has anyone threatened? Let me ask you this first. Has anyone promised you anything to make a statement?
Promise me good things?
Has anyone threatened you to make this statement or forced you to make that statement?
How do I answer that?
Do you understand what I'm asking you? Has anyone forced you to make this statement? Are you making the statement of your own free will?
As much as I can recall, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now, there is a page missing from the statement that was removed by us that related to unrelated information from not related to this case. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now, after the statement was taken, what, if anything, did you do?
We took Mr. Galindo on location.
All right. And before we go into that, you indicated that he told you that there was a note placed with the body. I want you to take a look at photograph number 10 and tell me if you notice that note that's folded with the rose between the hands of the deceased.
Yes, I do.
And that's the item depicted there with the red laser marker.
Yes, and it was wrapped around the white rose that he also referred to.
Okay, and when that note was opened up, it said the thing about Miami-Dade and the Mafia.
Yes, and what's interesting about that is at the time I took the statement, I did not know what the note said. The note was very bloody, so it had not been opened. We had not read the note. We could not read it. When I took his statement, he told me what the note said, and it wasn't until the next day that I confirmed that the note actually did say what he told me it said.
Okay, I want to show you it's been previously marked as State Exhibit 1L for identification. application. You recognize these photographs?
Yes, I do.
Are these the photographs of the defendant when he went out into the field?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, the state has an application to admit this item into evidence.
Any objections? Object. Overrule the objection, allow it into evidence.
When L becomes state 17?
All right, State 17. What are we looking at in photograph number 1?
This is Mr. Galindo accompanying myself and my squad on location, as we call it, or into the field, where he pointed out evidence or where evidence had been placed. Now, number 1 shows the crime scene where the actual body had been placed and the leg had been placed. And actually, that's number 2 does the same thing.
And how did you know to go to this location?
He directed us there. He told us to go there. It was through his directions that we were traveling to that location.
And what's depicted in 2?
That's just another angle of it.
Number 3.
This is where he dumped the fingers and thumbs. He said he placed them in that dumpster. You can see myself and Mr. Galindo standing there by the dumpster. We looked inside the dumpster, it was completely empty. So probably in the time between, the death and he dumped the fingers and we took the confession and we went back, the garbage had been picked up.
Fingers were never recovered, is
No,
that correct?
they were not.
With regards to the fingers, what, if anything, did the defendant say about finding fingers?
Before we had gone to the dumpster, while we were at the site, we were all very tired. We'd been working probably 34 hours straight on the case. We had gotten very little sleep, if any sleep. We were at the scene. We had, someone had gone and gotten Dunkin' Donuts coffee. We were drinking coffee, and Mr. Galindo was standing by us and became very impatient. He said, "Gentlemen, let's go. We've got fingers to find. Let's get it done. Let's go."
All right. And what was his demeanor? Was he sad or crying?
He was, I can only describe as excited. It was almost like now he was part of our squad and he was working on the case with us and we had to go do this, find this evidence.
Photograph number 4. What can you tell me about that photograph?
This is where he's pointing to the car keys and the knife that he used to kill the victim.
Now, the look on his face, it looks like he's smiling.
Well, he's into it. He's into it right now. He's having a good time. He's enjoying himself. He's actually immersed himself in the investigation. He thinks he's part of the homicide team now that's investigating the case.
And again, here, where is he standing in this photograph?
This is
Number
a
5.
couple trailers down from his trailer, and this is the bush where the white rose. You can see that's a white rose bush, and that's a bush where the rose was taken from that was placed in the note that was placed on the victim's body.
Now, number 6, he's standing next to what?
This is a church where he's pointing to where he dumped the car, the victim's car. Actually, it's a small little tiny church in the Liberty City area, Brownsville area, and the car was no longer there. We eventually talked to the pastor of the church, and he said the car was there for a while, but it had been stolen, he believes.
And he's, again, he's smiling. Like
Yes, he is.
a high school yearbook picture.
Yes.
All right. Did anybody tell him, hey, smile for the camera?
No.
And number 7, what is that?
That actually shows the knife as it was found. He took us to a really remote area and took us right to the location where the victim's car keys were found, and the knife was pretty close, within about 5 or 10 feet of the car keys.
All right. Now, during the statement itself, you made reference to showing him a picture of the victim who he identified as the person that he killed.
Yes.
I'm not showing you what's in evidence as State's Exhibit 6. Is that photograph, State's Exhibit 6, the same person that you showed the defendant a picture of that he said he killed?
Yes, it is.
And for the record, that's a picture of the deceased, Helio Gonzalez. All right, so after he pointed out all of these items to you, what, if anything, occurred next?
He was then taken to the jail. He was taken to the Miami-Dade County Jail.
And with regards to the recovery of plastic gloves, did you have anything to do with the recovery of the plastic gloves in the kitchen sink?
I'm sorry, prior to him going to the Dade County Jail, he was taken back to his trailer. That's actually where we got the picture with the rose bush. And we had a search warrant that was drawn up. A judge signed a search warrant giving us consent to search, giving us permission to search his trailer. At the same time, he gave us consent. So we had a search warrant, and we also had his consent to search the trailer. And at that time, a second search Now, you remember the first day we searched his trailer and just got some things that were laying around the knives. This is the second search that we conducted and did a more in-depth search. That was when we obtained several items of evidentiary value in the bathtub.
Okay, I want to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 1S. You recognize this item?
Yes.
And what are these items?
Well, first of all, this is the plastic bag. Again, another one of these plastic bags that has that same warning on it, and these are plastic or rubber gloves, plastic gloves, latex gloves that were found near the plastic bag in his trailer.
Appear to be blood or human
Yes.
body material on it?
Yes.
Does this picture fairly and accurately depict the way the gloves were recovered from the bathroom of the defendant?
Yes, it does.
Right, this time your Honor, State has an application to admit 1S into evidence.
Any objections?
Yes, we object.
Okay, let's go over the objection allowed into evidence.
1S becomes state's 18.
All right, with the court's permission, like to publish.
Which is granted.
All right, so what is the jury looking at here?
They're looking at the bathroom of the defendant's trailer, and you see blood on some bloody gloves. You also see those same garbage bags that I referred to earlier that were used to tie up the victim. They were also used to conceal the victim's leg after it was amputated or severed from the victim's body.
Showing you what's been previously marked 1W. You recognize this photograph?
Yeah, this is where he took us on location and pointed out the victim's car keys to us.
All right, and does this picture fairly and accurately depict the way the car keys appeared in the ground that night?
Yes, it does.
At this time, State has an application to admit this item into evidence.
Any objections?
Object.
Overrule the objection allowed into evidence.
1W becomes state's 19.
Permission, let's publish to the jury.
Which is granted.
And the keys depicted in there.
Yes.
And these are the keys to the Cadillac that belonged to the deceased. Is that
Yes.
correct? And he hid them out in the field after he got rid of the car.
Yes, very close to where the knife that was used to kill the victim was found also, within feet.
And what did he say he did with the victim's car?
He said he brought it down into a bad area so that it would be stolen, and that's exactly probably what happened to the car. It was brought to it, as that picture 6 shows, it was brought near a church. It was parked in a little parking lot near a church. We talked to the preacher of the church, and he said that the car was there, the car we described, but it was apparently stolen within a couple days.
And with regards to the Yossel's car that he used to transport the body, what did he do with that?
He said he sold that for $100 to a man that he met on the street.
But he told Yoslin that what
It
happened.
was stolen.
I'll show you what's in evidence that states 1X. Do you recognize that?
This is actually the garbage bag that I saw in his apartment as I first walked in, that looked exactly like the garbage bag that was concealing the leg at the scene, the severed leg.
All right, this time state has an application to admit this item in evidence.
Any objections?
Object.
Overrule the objection allowed into evidence.
1X becomes state's 20.
And does it have the warning on there that you mentioned that was similar to the other bag?
Yes, yes it does. Now, I did go to the mobile station across the street, which is where he said he purchased those bags, and I saw bags very similar to those that were being sold. So they looked exactly like the bags that he said he bought across the street. He couldn't remember what it was, but it was a mobile station with a mini mart inside, and I found the identical bags being sold there.
Okay. That's all I have for this witness. Thank you very much.
We're going to cross-examination, Mr. Galindo. Okay, we need to take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break for approximately 10 minutes. During the break, I'm going to ask that you not discuss the case amongst yourselves.
Mr. Marner, isn't it true that you interviewed me twice in the murder case? Meaning, the first time you interviewed me, I think it was July 2nd or July 3rd.
At your trailer, I spoke to you briefly at your trailer, but you were actually taken down to the homicide office to be interviewed more in depth by Detective Hernandez. Yes, that's
And
true.
that happened on July 3rd or?
Well, I spoke to you. I wouldn't call that an interview. That was more of just a casual conversation back and forth. That was the point where you gave me permission to search your trailer, and you signed the form giving me permission for the first time to search your trailer, yes.
Okay, so at the homicide office, isn't it true that at the homicide office, you, on the first interview, I'm talking about July 3rd, isn't it true that you gave me a Miranda form or something on that day also?
I didn't, the other detectives did, but I didn't give you that. I gave you at the trailer, in fact, I have a copy here of a consent to search.
So you actually did do an interview?
Well, that's not an interview. I asked you if you would be willing to allow me to search your trailer, and you said that you would.
Okay.
But an interview is more in depth.
And just say,
Okay, Mr. Galindo, please let the witness respond, okay? So you can ask him a question, then finish before you ask your next question,
Okay,
okay?
all right.
Okay, go ahead, proceed.
Okay, we're not talking about the motion to consent, consent of the trailer that I signed. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the Miranda waiver form that they said that I signed on July 3rd.
I wasn't present for that. I wasn't present when you signed that Miranda form on the 3rd.
You just said that I wasn't interviewed on that day.
Not by me, but you were interviewed by Detective Hernandez, I believe. I wasn't present, so I can't say who interviewed you or who had you sign a form. I was present at the trailer. I asked Mr. Galindo to sign a consent form to allow his trailer to be searched. He did. He was then taken down to the homicide office where other investigators spoke with him, not me. I didn't talk to him then.
Okay, so, but you are indeed the sergeant of that detective, but you wasn't present that day.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay, and a case as serious as this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and isn't it true that on that day, normally you guys give homicide, meaning don't normally homicide give defendants Miranda waiver forms when they're going to be interviewed?
No, not necessarily. Only if a person is in custody or there's a possibility they may be arrested. It's custodial interrogation is the only time that Miranda is required. So if that person is under arrest, or it's possible we're going to arrest them and they're not going to be allowed to go home that evening, will we give them Miranda?
Okay. Well,
So you were given Miranda and you were allowed to go home, so it was not a custodial interrogation.
Okay, so I was given Miranda and I was allowed to go home.
Yes.
Okay.
So you got double.
On
for the
that
money.
day, isn't it true that I told you after signing the Miranda waiver that the Miranda waiver basically said that I had a right to that's just one of the rights where it says I have a right to remain silent, correct?
If you're referring to July 3rd, Mr. Galindo, I didn't speak to you on that day. I only asked you to sign the form that allowed me to search your trailer. I had nothing to do with the Miranda form that you executed down at the homicide office.
Okay, but isn't it true though that there is a Miranda form for July 3rd?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about?
I've seen it, yes. It's here in the case file, yes.
Okay, so according to that Miranda form, which I'm sure you've seen, correct?
Yes, it's right here in front of me, yes.
Okay, July 3rd, do you recall any of the detectives, or isn't it true that that I said, to the best of your recollection, that I said that I didn't want to say anything about the murder?
Mr. Galindo, I was not there, so I don't know if you said you did or you didn't. I wasn't there for that form. I spoke to you on July 4th. That's when you and I completed that confession, that statement, and I read that form to you that was executed on July 4th. And you indicated to me on July 4th that you understood your rights and you were willing to waive your rights on July 4th.
Okay.
I know nothing about July 3rd Miranda, other than I've seen the form.
Let's go to July 4th then.
Yes, sir.
On the Miranda violation, the second time you picked me up, isn't it true that you picked, why was it, I want to know what was the reason for you picking me up a second time if you already let me go about questioning me about the murder?
Well, you were under arrest for another charge.
Okay. And the detective that helped arrest me on that charge, was he helping homicide at the time as well?
No, he just knew that you were a suspect in a homicide, and he knew that he had an arrest that he could effect on you, so he arrested you.
Okay. And about the Argelio Gonzalez, the son of the deceased victim, how did he know who I was?
He told us that his father had been having ongoing difficulties and problems with you over the last several weeks.
Okay, so he just knew where I lived and...
Yes, he pointed out your trailer to us. He drove by and pointed out the trailer, yes.
Okay, so on the day that you went out to get this consent from me to search my house, you basically went there with the intent of wanting to speak to me or wanting to speak to Jocelyn?
Both.
Oh. Okay, well, if this is the case, then why is it that I was left at homicide office and Jocelyn was later just released?
I can't answer that. I don't know. I wasn't at the homicide office. I've been over this ground. I was not present for your interview. You need to ask those questions of the detectives.
Well, we're speaking about the consent. We're speaking about the
Right,
day of
I
the
got consent from you to search your trailer. That's what my involvement was on that evening. I helped the crime lab search your trailer. We impounded various items of evidence. We impounded the garbage bags. We impounded the knife that was used to cut off the victim's leg. We impounded the other knife that was used in the assault.
The question was whether or not you participated in anything else during that day besides just the consent. Because if you're the sergeant, I suggest that you might have been involved in a little bit more than just serving the consent. Do you agree?
I can only be one place at one time. I can't be two places at once. So I was at the trailer, and I trust my detectives that work on my squad to be able to handle their portions of the investigation, so they were allowed to do that.
And who else was with you there on the day that you went to go obtain these items that you obtained?
The crime lab technician, Mr. Charles, Tommy Charles.
Thomas Charles.
Tommy Charles, yes.
Okay, that's the only one.
And Detective Zimmerman.
Okay, was there anyone else in the...
Well, my entire squad was there at one point, but little by little they left to go to other various places.
Was there anyone else, the question was there anyone else allowed to come in and out of the crime scene?
Well, yeah, my entire squad was there to come in and out of the crime scene.
I mean civilians.
No, no civilians.
So isn't it true that in the deposition of, in the statement of Mr. Thomas Charles, that same technician that you're talking about, crime scene investigator, that he actually said that there was actual people coming in and out of the crime scene. Isn't it true that that's what his deposition said?
I have no idea. I've never read Mr. Charles's deposition. I have no idea what you're talking about.
So how active are you really in this case? Because you seem not to know anything.
Well, I know enough of my portion of the investigation to be able to testify.
Which is just a consent.
And the confession that I took
And the
from you.
confession.
Yes, sir. That's
Okay.
correct.
Now, as far as the confession goes, I was looking at your police reports, but at the time of you coming to the house on the first time that you came to my house, isn't it true that you went there with the victim's son?
Yes, he pointed out the house, but he did not stay.
Okay, so he never entered inside the house and said, Jocelyn, if it's you, I'm going to kill you?
No, we would never allow a civilian to enter a scene that we were searching.
Okay. All right. Now, as far as the consent goes, what were the articles that you did collect?
We collected the saw or meat saw type knife, the other knife that was there, some blood evidence, and the garbage bags. We also took numerous photographs.
Okay. And from these items that you collected, was there anything that linked the victim's blood, for example, or the victim's DNA to those items that you collected?
Yes.
And what items were those?
There was blood evidence that was taken from the walls that was linked to the victim through DNA.
And who was the one who linked that DNA evidence to the
It
victim?
would have been someone in the crime lab, I'm not sure. I didn't do that. I only know from reading crime lab reports that there was DNA evidence.
Well, it's a big allegation what you're saying, that you're basically saying that there's a DNA of a victim in my house. So I want to know what name specifically took the DNA test. Could you answer that?
You're the one that asked me, Mr. Galindo, if there was DNA evidence. I say that as far as I know, from reading police reports, there is DNA evidence. I don't know who collected it, and I don't know who compared the DNA. It will eventually be brought out, I'm sure.
Okay, and you will not be the one to bring that up.
Exactly, that's exactly
So
right.
you
I will
don't
not.
know.
Someone that works in the crime lab will come in and explain DNA.
Okay, that's all that you could tell the jury right now.
That's all I can say, yes. That's
Okay,
all I know.
So basically, you don't have enough proof to say that there was DNA evidence of Mr. Argelio in my house, correct?
All I know is that I've read a Metro-Dade or a Miami-Dade Police Department crime lab analysis report that says that Mr. Argelio Gonzalez's DNA was found inside your trailer. Other than that, I can't verify any of it. I just read a report. That's all I can tell you. But I wouldn't have told you that had you not asked me. You asked me that.
Okay, well, don't you think it would be a little bit more convenient for a trial like this to be prepared and knowing names like that? Of criminologists and people that just stick out in the case. For example, a person that would know that type of information.
I would not have offered that information, Mr. Galindo, had you not asked me that information. There's a proper procedure in which that information is brought to the jury, and you're kind of circumventing that proper procedure, but I'm required to speak truthfully on the stand, so I'm just answering you as truthfully as I can.
Okay, so the truth is you don't know the actual name of the person that took the DNA.
That's the truth. I saw a report. The truth is I saw a report that says that that the victim's DNA was found in your trailer. I don't know who the person is that authored that report.
Okay. So during any part of the interrogation process, for example, that you went with me as far as the post confession or the post statements that you say that I gave to you, at any time did I ever say I don't want to speak about this anymore, or I don't have anything prior to say about this, I don't have anything else to say about this?
No, in fact, you were involved in it. You were very eager to talk about the incident and eager to show us where the evidence was.
Well, I'm over here looking at one of the police reports that you yourself prepared, and I don't know if you have your police
I do.
reports up there?
Yes, I do. Which page?
Page 3 of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Page 3 of 10 specifies on the third paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
the first sentence. It says, initially, Galindo denied possessing any information regarding the victim's murder.
Well, in the prior question, you said to me, after we had taken the confession and were out looking for the evidence, did there come a time when you tried to recant or say that you didn't want to talk anymore? That is true. You did not. You were eager to do it. Initially, that is true. Initially, when I first entered the room and began talking to you, you said to me that you didn't want to talk, that you didn't know anything about the victim's murder. It was then, if you'll read down in a further paragraph, I said that you became thoughtful and pensive, and then you said, Sarge, do you go to church? Do you take your family to church? And when I answered in the affirmative, you said, I can see in your eyes that you're a holy person, so I'm going to tell you something. I killed him. That's when the confession starts. That's when you come over.
Okay, you're repeating what the prosecution already spoke about.
Well, sure.
My question was, on right here on this paragraph, where I'm basically telling you, I'm asking you right now, you said no, that I never basically chose to remain silent in any way.
I'm not disputing that whatsoever. Initially, you said you had nothing to do with it. That's what you had told Detective
So
Hernandez.
you admitted to...
Sure.
Let him respond, Mr. Galindo.
Okay.
Let him finish
Go
his
ahead.
answer.
Go ahead, Mr. Monahan.
Sure. I readily admit that you initially said you had nothing to do with this. That's never been
Okay.
disputed.
All right. Don't normally, isn't that a right on the Miranda waiver form? That a person says, you know, I have a right to remain silent? I agree to that?
But you didn't remain silent. You said that you had nothing to do with it. Then we continued talking, and as we continued talking, you admitted to me that you had something to do with it. You have the right. If you'd have remained silent, that would have been it, but you did not. You chose not to.
So what would it take for a defendant to say, okay, I don't want to speak anymore? So if a person says, you know what, Mr. Monahan, I don't want to speak about this anymore. Is that considered remaining silent, or is that considered put handcuffs on me, take me in a room, and take the confession out of me?
But Mr. Galindo, that's not what you said. Had you said that, I would have stopped, but that is not what you said. You continued talking with me.
So that's what you say in court now?
Many people deny being involved in a murder initially. That's very, very common. That's almost universal that they will deny it. But then after I explained to you the massive amount of evidence that we could surmount against you, or mount against you, then you decided that you would talk to me.
And about that massive amount of evidence, could you explain to us what is that evidence?
Well, the
you're talking about?
DNA, the blood, the forensic evidence. I explained to you, I said that there's a possibility that your hair may be found on the victim's body. I said hair sometimes falls out, and you said to me, that's true, my eyebrows fall out all the time.
Okay, and did you also forget the names of the people that took the hair samples and the DNA and the blood samples?
I wasn't
also?
there for those to be
So
taken.
you don't know them either?
No, but I'm sure
Oh, okay.
it will be brought out eventually.
Oh, okay, all right. Now, in this same page, on the fourth paragraph, on the first sentence, it says, this writer, meaning you yourself, began detailing and summarizing to the subject the mass amount of physical evidence that could possibly be developed against him. When you said when it says detailing and summarizing, were you telling me what to say?
No. I'm talking at that point. That means I'm telling you what we could potentially find in evidence against you. And you listened. If you recall, you were there and I was there. We both know what happened.
So how did you have evidence against me if you haven't yet obtained a confession from me?
Well, physical, I'm talking about physical. I'm not talking about testimony. I'm talking about physical evidence.
Okay, before you took the confession, you had detailed information, and that's what you're telling me there, right?
No, I'm saying I was detailing and summarizing for you. There's a difference between detailed information and detailing. I was detailing for you and summarizing for you the information that I had at that time. And much of that, in fact, I go into it in this paragraph. The garbage bags were identical to those that had used to tie the victim. Those bags may lead to fingerprints. There's a lot of other forensic evidence, DNA, blood. The cuts on your hands were very indicative of someone that had inflicted multiple stab wounds.
Okay, and as far, now that you said fingerprints on the bags, whatever happened with that? Or did you forget the name of the person that took those fingerprints also?
I'm sure they were attempted to be obtained by the lab. You have to understand, Mr. Galindo, that we're compartmentalized. I do the investigation, but we have lab people that do their job and do the lab part. I don't know how to raise fingerprints. I don't know how to use DNA. I don't know how to accumulate DNA or process DNA. So we have other people that are experts in those fields that do that.
So the question really was, do you know the name of the person that took the fingerprints from these bags that you're alleging that had my fingerprints?
No,
So you don't know them either?
no.
So my question now is, why do you keep saying things that you really don't have a clue about what you're speaking about?
Mr. Galindo, if you read the paragraph in my report, I said we could possibly get fingerprints. I did not tell you we had
Possibly.
fingerprints.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I said possibly get fingerprints, we could possibly get DNA, we could possibly get forensic evidence. And I explained to you about the hair falling out. It was at that time that you said, yeah, my hair does fall out.
Okay.
And I remember us discussing CSI, and you said that you did watch shows like that, and you had read books on DNA.
Yeah, you said that recently with the prosecutor. Okay. Now the part here where it says that my demeanor changed and he became
Pensive means thoughtful.
pensive and okay, and you go to church and all right. Do you see that when someone tells you, I can see in your eyes that you're a holy person, so I'm going to tell you something, I killed him. At the time, it also specifies, if I could find it right quick, on page 4 of 10, on the second paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
the first sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It says, as the subject proceeded with his narrative, he began to shake and sob uncontrollably. But later on, you had spoken to the prosecutor and said that I wasn't crying and that I was somehow excited about what was going on.
Well, this is much later. This is later when we're out on location, when we're looking for the evidence. And that's where you were eager to help us. We're talking about hours and hours of difference here. This is, early on in the pre-interview. We're talking later on, probably after midnight when we're out on location.
Okay, so let me get this right. So I was shaking and sobbing while being interrogated by you, but when I was out on location with you, I was excited about what was going on.
If you'll recall, and if you read in this paragraph, you were shaking and sobbing because you told me that there's always been something wrong with you, that your parents thought there was something wrong with you because you liked to kill small animals, and that you had cut small animals. You said that the family dog had puppies one day, and that you cut open these puppies.
I object to that part of the statement.
Well, you asked me the question, Mr. Goodman.
I believe the prosecutor removed it.
What was that?
So you're asking different questions. If you don't want the responses, don't ask the questions.
All right.
And if I could finish, you told me that you...
There's no question posed at this point.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Mr. Galindo.
Okay. So you agree that I was shaking and sobbing uncontrollably in front of you. What does it mean exactly when it says uncontrollably? Was I moving around, or was I just like screaming to the top of my lungs?
No, there was no screaming. It was just that you were shaking and sobbing because you were telling me the story about killing animals and that you felt so upset about that people thought there was something wrong with you, that you wanted to kill small animals.
Oh, so I was shaking and sobbing uncontrollably because I felt bad about cutting animals. That's what you're saying?
Not exactly. You said that you always felt that your mother and father thought there was something wrong with you.
Okay.
And you used the example to me that when the family dog had puppies, that you took all 6 puppies and you cut them open to see the pretty colors inside. And you said you were always fascinated by cutting open small animals. And you said that because of that, you thought your family hated you. And that's when you started sobbing.
And during your investigation as the sergeant of the case, was there any evidence that I in fact did cut any animals?
No, only your admission.
Okay. And normally if an admission is given when a person is crying or when a person is shaking uncontrollably, is this considered to be willful? Is this something that you guys consider willful, or is it something that you basically let the person calm down and then take their confession? Is that?
Well, it's really not a confession. We're not talking about the killing of Mr. Gonzalez at this point. You're just giving me background on your life and explaining to me, why you feel that your family hates you.
So basically, I'm just feeling sorry for myself right here, what you're saying.
Well, that's probably a good way to put it, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. And when you refer to the spirit of Candelo as my dead uncle, Where exactly did you come up with the name Candelo?
You told me the name. I would never have known what Candela was or who Candela was, and I didn't know who your uncle was, Jose Aguilar. I mean, it's all from your mouth that you told me this story.
So is it true that I told you that Candelo was my uncle?
Yes. You said your dead uncle, that he was murdered. You said he was shot in the head execution style, and ever since the day he was killed, you had been inhabited by his demonic twin or something of that order, and that he had inhabited you.
And during your investigation, have you ever found out to see if I do have a dead uncle named Jose Aguilar?
Not that I know of. I haven't checked into that, no.
Oh, okay. So,
It was your story, not mine, mister.
according to the case, it seems like you really don't know much about the case. So I'm just asking you questions, sir. So right here it says that the subject became agitated and demanded to be handcuffed and shackled.
Yes.
When you say agitated and demanded to be handcuffed and shackled, could you give us since you guys didn't really videotape the confession or anything like that, and the jury's not able to actually see what went on, could you give us some type of demonstration as to what agitated or how did I look when I was agitated?
You looked agitated. You said, I have to be shackled. I'm a bad person. You were moving your hands like this. You said, I'm a bad person. I need to be shackled. You said, Sarge, if you let me go, you have to get me for this. If you let me go, I'm going to kill again. Handcuff me.
Did
I said, well, wait a minute, hold on. I'm going to go get some handcuffs.
Okay. And did I do anything else after being handcuffed or shackled?
Well, as I explained to the jury earlier, it took me a while to find a set of handcuffs. And you sat in there, and I came back in, and I said, Lazaro, I can't find any handcuffs. Do we really need to do this? And you said, yes, you need to handcuff me. I'm a bad person. You need to put me away. Don't let me go. If you let me out, I'm going to kill again. So I went back out, and I found a pair of handcuffs, and we handcuffed you behind the back. And then at some point, you said you had calmed down, that you felt better if you could write, if you could draw. We both know. We remember this. And you said that you needed to draw it and calm you. So we handcuffed you in front. I handcuffed you in front. I got you a pad, and I got you a felt tip marker, and you began drawing as we talked.
I just don't understand. How is it that you can remember this, but yet you can't remember the names of the people that took the DNA test?
Because I was there for this, Mr. Galindo. I was there. I witnessed it.
So
I wasn't there for the testing of the DNA. I wasn't there for the testing of the fingerprints. That wasn't my portion of the investigation. My portion of the investigation is talking to you.
Did you know that we had a trial today?
Yes, sure, of course, I'm here.
And did you know that you needed to prepare and somehow know these things?
Sure.
Because right now you don't basically know the main principles of what you're saying.
Well, those aren't my duties to prepare for. My duties are to prepare to talk about your confession. And that's what I've been doing for the past afternoon.
Now, the third paragraph on page 5 of 10, it says, this writer, meaning you, then redirected the interview back to the victim, back to how the victim was killed. So, I want to know, how is it that you keep redirecting, and how you keep just completely just detailing and summarizing to me during the whole thing about the murder if you haven't yet received a confession?
Well, you're in the process of confessing, and you're off on tangents. You're talking about other things, how my family hates me, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm trying to bring you back, and by asking specific questions, that's how I bring you back to talk about the specific incident that we're talking about.
Well, my question is this, because you had just said that you were detailing and summarizing about bags and things that were basically found on the victim. But here it says, this writer then redirected the interview back to how the victim was killed. Back to how the victim wasn't killed with garbage bags, sir.
I'm confused. You're confusing me, but what I'm saying to you is this. I'm not following your line of questioning at all, to be honest with you, but what I'm telling you is that if I'm talking to you and you're off on tangents, as a good interrogator or interviewer, what I do is I bring you back to the subject we're speaking about. If you're talking about a car that you owned when you're a teenager, that has nothing to do with the murder we're talking about. So what I'm trying to do is bring you back to the portion of that interview where we're talking about the victim being killed. That's all I'm saying. When I say redirect, I'm saying I'm bringing you back. I'm focusing you back on where we're talking.
Okay, so at that point, you didn't actually know the specifics about how he was killed, but
No, but you were going to tell me. That's why I'm bringing you back. That's why I'm redirecting you.
You redirect. Okay. Now on page 6 of 10, it says something about as he stood up to catch his breath after stabbing the victim, he observed the victim vomit blood and his stomach contents, rice, beans, and meat onto the pavement. My question is, did you ever find rice, beans, and meat in any area of the scene where the body was at? Or?
If you recall, Mr. Galindo, when we went on location, we went back to your trailer. And there's a picture actually of it where you pointed out to me, this is where the victim threw up the blood, the rice, and the beans, and the meat. And there's a stain on the pavement, and we took a picture of that stain.
You mean where the car was parked, the oil stain?
No, this is a stain that you pointed out to me, and you said right here is where he threw up. This is where he threw up the rice and beans and meat. And we had a crime lab person take a picture, and you watched him take a picture.
And in the picture, are you here today testifying under oath that the picture is going to show rice and beans and meat?
No, because you washed it off. You told me that you washed it off.
Oh, so there's just a stain?
There's a stain, yes, sir.
And the stain is supposed to be of rice, beans, and meat?
That's what you told me. You told me this is the stain where he threw up.
Okay. And you confirmed this by the crime scene investigator?
Well, he just took a picture. That's all. Just took a picture of the stain. There's no way to really determine what that was.
Okay, so there really was no way to determine what that was?
No, I'm going by what you told me. You said this is the stain that he made when he threw up, so we took a picture of it as evidence.
Okay, and do you have any type of proof that it is rice and beans that was
No.
there? And isn't it true that Mr. Argelio did not have any contents of rice and beans in his stomach?
I don't know that. You had told us that you had washed it off with water and Clorox, so there's no way to tell if there's rice, beans, blood. That would destroy any evidence.
Okay, so you knowing the case, you don't have no idea either about what the medical examiner did in the case?
I wasn't there for the autopsy.
So, okay, as the sergeant of the case, you don't know that either?
Like I said, I wasn't there for the autopsy, but I'm sure the medical examiner will be able to testify.
Okay. All right. You said also here in the same page on the third paragraph, it says, he stated that because of the frenzy he was in, he is not exactly sure when this occurred, but that he later noticed several cuts on his hands and legs that were bleeding profusely. Are you basically stating in this report that I self-inflicted myself as I was stabbing the victim?
No, not at all. What I'm saying is that, and this is very common in murders where there are multiple stab wounds, that people that stab victims will very often cut themselves because in their frenzy they're cutting like this and they may hit themselves in the leg or in the arm because it's such a stabbing frenzy, or because the blood of the victim gets on the knife, they may slip down on the blade of the knife and cut themselves. We look for that in almost every homicide where there are multiple stab wounds because it's inevitable that that person, that attacker, will probably stab themselves or cut themselves in some way. And in this case, it was just a classic example of that phenomenon.
And since it was a classic and you look for that type of stuff, I assume that if the knife when the knife that I'm stabbing myself and stabbing the victim with.
Well, you're not intentionally stabbing yourself, so it's an accident.
Oh, so it's an accident, but I'm bleeding though?
Yes.
Okay, so therefore, is it good to say that that my blood is being stabbed into the victim?
You mean would your blood intermingle with the victim's?
Yes.
That's possible, yes.
Okay, and do you have any proof of that? And if so, what are the names? Once again.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you saying that I have
Let me
blood?
repeat it. Let me rephrase it.
Okay.
The question is, if so, like you just said, it's a classic for people who stab victims with knives to basically slide, and then during the process of stabbing people, that they cut their hands,
Yes.
and therefore that they bleed on the knife. Isn't it true that when they're stabbing the person, or is it logical to say that the person that's being stabbed is being stabbed some type of way by the same blood that's on the knife into the victim?
Well, if I assume what you're asking me, is there blood evidence of yours on the scene? Well, you told me, number one, you told me that you had cleaned everything with Clorox and rags, so that would render any evidence
That's
on...
not the question, sir.
Well, answer me the
The
question.
question is, you say that I stabbed this man and basically self-inflicted myself by accident, and somehow stabbed this man and therefore bled on the knife and stabbed the man back into the body, meaning that my blood has been stabbed into his body. And since it's a classic, like you say, did you in fact prove that?
No, that's not, what he's referring to is just not possible. What I'm saying is if someone cuts himself and there's blood droppings on the scene, we can say that that's foreign blood that does not belong to the victim, so it must be the attacker. But what he's saying is, would it go into the body, and that's just not possible.
Please don't speak to the jury, sir. I'm asking you the questions.
Mr. Galindo, I will control the courts, okay?
Because I've
If there's
seen...
a problem with the witness, I will make a determination. You understand that? You can ask your next question. Proceed.
Okay. Now, the question is, once again, do you know the name of the person who took the DNA samples from this classic stabbing incident where a person is putting their blood into the other person's body with a knife?
Mr. Galindo, I'm telling you, there's no such process.
So there's no DNA process in the world.
Not if the blood goes into the other victim. What I'm telling you, you're misunderstanding what I'm explaining to you.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that if you cut yourself and your blood is on the floor next to the victim's blood, that's excellent evidence that you're the attacker. I'm not saying that the blood goes into the victim. I'm not saying that.
And was there, in fact, my blood on the victim?
Well, we'll never know because you washed him for 2 days and you cleaned up the scene with Clorox and rags, so we'll never know.
Well,
There
that's
probably
not an
was.
answer. That's not an answer. You just...
That's my answer.
Now, as far as the DNA evidence goes, I'm basically seeing that you don't have no names to no one.
That's correct.
But you seem to know a lot about DNA. So my question is, did you have any other degrees, such as in DNA analysis or something like that, to come to such a conclusion like you have right now?
I've come to no conclusion. What I've told you, I have no degrees, first of all. The only thing I've told you is that I have read a report that indicates that the victim's DNA was in your trailer. That's all. Period. Nothing else. I've made no analysis. I cannot do any analysis. I'm telling you, I read a report. That's it.
Well, sir, you did make a conclusion. Your conclusion was that it's impossible to obtain DNA evidence from a victim's body
No.
if you're putting your blood into them.
That's not what I'm saying, Mr. Galindo. What I'm saying is that that's virtually impossible to transfer blood into another victim. I mean, it possibly could be done, but you've washed the body so much in that tub with hot water for 2 days. In this instance, it is impossible.
Okay, so let's say this pen is a knife, and I have the knife in my hand. I'm stabbing the victim. I'm stabbing the victim.
Right,
I bleed on the knife.
right.
Now, if I could show the jury the wounds that Mr. Monheim is saying about.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Galindo, but what
I
I'm
want to show the jury the incisions of my hands. Defense counsel is gonna show the jury, standby counsel, Thomas Cove is gonna show the jury defense exhibit A and for identification A7.
Yes, sir. These are the classic cuts I referred to, that when someone attacks someone with a knife and cuts themselves, you'll see cuts such as these in the stabbing frenzy that they self-inflict on themselves accidentally.
So is it logical to say that a person with such an opening on their hands like those, did you show the jury?
One of them is not in evidence.
Which one is not in evidence? At this point, defense moves defense exhibit A7.
Any objections? In evidence or no objections?
A7 becomes defense B.
And yes,
Can you show it to the jury? Yeah, thank you. These wounds were open to the point where they exposed bone inside. So that's why they were sealed the way that they were sealed by the doctors at Hialeah Hospital. They resulted.
Galindo, you testifying or you asking a
I'm
question?
sorry.
That
I'm
hasn't
sorry.
come yet.
I'm sorry.
If you have a question, you can ask a question.
Yeah. So the question is, if in fact, isn't it logical to say that if you're stabbing someone and you stick your knife in your leg this deep, that somehow blood is going to be on that knife, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, and if I'm stabbing the victim, therefore somehow, doesn't take a rocket scientist, right, to know that you're putting your blood somehow into the victim, correct?
What I explained to you, Mr. Galindo, was that it wasn't possible in this case because you said you squirted Dawn into all the wounds and that you washed the body for hours.
Okay, I see you don't want to answer the question, so could you just give me a yes or no, sir? Is it
Sir,
possible?
respond to the question.
Is it possible to inflict the same way that I just explained it? After the knife has been in my hand, in my leg, and then in the body, that the victim has somehow received my blood inside his body?
Yes, it's possible.
And is it possible then to obtain some type of DNA evidence from those wounds?
Yes, it's remotely possible, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, as to the Dawn detergent that you're speaking about, I mean, I've heard you say it a couple times. Do you mean the dishwashing liquid, Dawn?
Yes, yes.
Okay, was there any evidence to prove that?
You told me that that's what you did.
So by me telling you that, that's basically evidence?
Yes, it's testimony.
And did you confirm that evidence, or you just accept it truthfully, like I'm gonna?
Well, we may have confirmed it had you not washed the body for 2 days. I mean, then we may have confirmed it.
Okay. And do you in fact have any proof that I washed the body?
Your testimony.
Okay. Other than the testimony, do you have any evidence? Does the evidence show that I washed the body?
No. It shows that, well, one of the things you told me was that you cut the victim's eyebrows off, and they were in fact cut off. You said you used a blue Bic razor to cut the victim's eyebrows off, and that was done. So I have to assume if you told me that and that was true, that the Dawn dishwashing liquid would, logically, I make that assumption that you're telling me the truth about that also.
Okay, so does the evidence show that Dawn detergent was in fact put into the body like you explained, in the holes of the body?
Mr. Galindo, you told me you did that. I can't prove that because you washed the body.
Okay, and you say I washed it with Dawn.
But you washed it with hot water also, to wash away all the Dawn.
And the question once again is, does the evidence prove that I washed it with Dawn detergent?
What, are you asking me, is there Dawn on the body? No.
Okay, but because you keep saying that Dawn was used to wash the body.
Because you told me that. That's why I keep
Okay.
saying it, because you told me that.
But does the evidence prove that? That's the question right there.
When you
Does
say the evidence, are
prove-
you asking me if there is Dawn on the body, that we recovered Dawn liquid from the body? The answer is no.
Okay, and you here specified that I shaved the victim's eyebrows.
Yes, you told me you
Does the
did.
evidence prove that?
Yes, the victim's eyebrows are gone.
Okay, and isn't it true that the medical examiner said that due to decomposition, that hair falls off of dead bodies? Didn't he say that?
He's referring to the hair, the scalp hair will fall off.
And doesn't the hair on the face?
If it's far enough decomposed, that's possible, yes, but this was not to that stage yet.
Okay, so you just jumped to the conclusion immediately that the eyebrows were shaved by me.
Mr. Galindo, I'm not jumping into conclusions. I'm just repeating what you told me.
Okay.
If you want to ask the medical examiner when he gets here those questions of how long it takes for hair to fall off, that's your prerogative. But what I'm telling you is I'm not saying I have any evidence that this happened. What I'm saying is you told me this is what you did.
Okay, well, besides what you say I told you, we're here today, I want to know about the evidence, okay? And I've asked you the question numerous times. Does the evidence show that I did these things that you're speaking of? Which is, number one, shave the victim's head.
Yes,
Or
yes,
the
I said the
victim's
eyebrows.
eyebrows.
Yes, it does. The body
Okay.
shows that you did that.
So the body shows a person with shaved eyebrows.
Yes.
And how were you able to determine that the eyebrows were shaved and instead the eyebrows didn't just fall out? How did you determine that? What exams, what analysis did you take in order to come to that conclusion?
Visually, I looked at the eyebrows, they look shaved.
And you have your eyesight is so well fixed that you're able to determine whether or not it was cut inside the body or whether or not it fell out. Is that what you're saying?
It appeared to me that the eyebrows had been shaved, just as you had said.
Okay. The razor that was used, did you ever recover that?
No, you told me that you didn't know what you did with it, that it wasn't at the house any longer. In your confession, you mentioned it.
So the evidence doesn't show a razor?
No.
Okay. It shows here also of a Mercury Grand Marquise that was used somehow. It says in page 8 of 10, on the second paragraph on the bottom, it says something of that he rolled the 2 garbage cans out of his trailer and placed them in the trunk of the vehicle, meaning the Mercury Grand Marquise.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Does the evidence prove that there is a Mercury Grand Marquise and that in fact there were trash cans in there?
Well, your girlfriend admitted that she had a Mercury. Yoslin admitted, your former girlfriend Yoslin admitted she had a Grand Marquis.
Okay.
And you told me that you sold it for $100. I had never seen the Grand Marquis. And what was the second part?
Well, the question was, did the evidence prove that the Mercury Grand Marquis did in fact, was it actually used to carry these trash cans where the victim was in? That's what I want to know.
That I don't know because we didn't find the Mercury, so we don't know. Had we found the Mercury, maybe that was possible, but we didn't find the Mercury.
So basically what I'm seeing here is that everything, well, the question is, why jump to so many conclusions about things that you don't know? That's the question. Why jump to so many conclusions about things about the evidence that you cannot prove, sir?
Again, Mr. Galindo, I'm not jumping to conclusions. I'm repeating what you told me.
Okay, but does the evidence prove that? What I
I'm
told
not
you?
alleging that the evidence, what I'm saying is this is what you told me. My portion of the investigation is to tell the jury what you told me. Other witnesses will explain other portions of the case. I'm not the only one that worked on the case. My portion of the case was to take your confession and to tell the jury what you said in the confession.
Well, sir.
Wait a minute, this is being repetitive. Do you have another area you need to cover?
Okay, I just turned the page. Okay, you came here today, the question would be that you came here today to present to us a confession that you believe to be true, correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you believe that the evidence proves this confession to be true?
Yes,
So you believe that the evidence proves it to be true?
yes.
When just a minute ago you told us that you don't know the names of the DNA experts and you don't have the Grand Marquis and you don't have these things, but yet you still stick to it being true.
Yes, sir, I do.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. You showed us where the knife was. You showed us where the victim's car keys were. You showed us the knife that you used to cut off the victim's leg. You tried to show us where the fingers were, but they were gone. Everything that you told me, you in fact backed up with evidence.
Okay, so this evidence that you say that I used to back up whatever I told you, was it actually backed up by the evidence in the whole case, meaning the experts?
Well, I can't speak for the experts. I can speak to what I did and what you showed me. You told me there would be a knife that you used to kill the victim in front of a factory. You told me that the victim's keys would be in front of this factory. You drove us to this remote area where this factory is, and there is the knife and there are the car keys. I mean, that's evidence to me.
So, okay, the victim's keys. You say the victim's keys as if you know for sure that they're the victim's keys. How do you know they're the victim's keys?
Well, they were GM Cadillac keys, and you told me they were the victim's keys.
So, I knew the victim so well that I knew his car, I knew his life, I knew all these things about him. That's
Well,
what
if you
you're
drove
saying.
his car, I'm sure you know that it was a Cadillac. And in fact, if you recall in your confession, you said you didn't know what make or you didn't know the model, if it was a Seville or a...
Okay, we're going to the confession now. But see, the thing is that I'm seeing that you continue to,
It's just
Not-
a question.
yes, he's,
Well, is it not a statement? You can ask him a question. Now's the time to question him.
yeah, is it true that you don't know the names of the people that took the DNA analysis? But
Yes.
yet you're the sergeant.
That's true, yes.
That's been covered already, Mr. Galindo.
Okay. All right. Your Honor, if I have a minute, I'm looking for a question. I think I got it right. Yeah, I got it right. Well, Mr. Monheim, do you believe that in order to present a confession, that you should know certain things about the confession in order to make it a real concrete thing where it could stick always, you know?
Generally, yes.
Okay, then why don't you know the concrete proof about this case, meaning the names of the people that took important DNA evidence? We have a victim here, a man who apparently had a beautiful family, but yet you say that you didn't sleep for 30-something hours and you don't know the names of the DNA analysis on the day of trial. What
That's
have you been
correct.
doing, sir?
That's not my area to be worried about during testimony.
Oh, so you're not...
When I'm testifying solely about the confession that I took from you.
So are you saying you're not worried about the victim's family, or you're not worried about
Not
the
at
case?
all. I'm very concerned about the victim's family. I'm concerned that they get justice.
Okay, then my question is, why haven't you helped this family in getting the names and getting all these things ready today? Because apparently you're a big figure here, and I want to know if you could back up these things.
Again, this has been asked and answered already. You need to go into a different area.
I'm going to go into the confession.
Go into the confession.
Okay, page 9 of the confession.
Yes, sir.
And the jurors, if you have your copy, you can look at it too.
Yes, sir.
Okay, on page 9 of the confession, I'm just going to run through it real quick. It says, did anyone witness this stabbing taking place? And the answer that you say that I gave was, I believe I took a glimpse to my side and I seen the man on the corner. Okay, back to concern about the family. If you in fact had so much concern, why didn't you find this man on the corner, sir?
We tried. As I mentioned, we went out all day on a holiday on July 4th, and we did an area canvass of that trailer park. But as you'll recall, that trailer park was scheduled for demolition, so there were very few trailers that were occupied, and some of the trailers that were occupied by squatters, just people that were homeless that happened to be sitting in a trailer. So it's very possible. We knocked on every door, on every trailer, on every street surrounding your trailer, and we didn't find anyone that witnessed this stabbing as indicated here, but that doesn't mean that that person doesn't exist. It only means that we didn't find that person, and it may be that that person was just squatting in that trailer on that day. And as you know, that trailer park has been demolished since then.
Yes, sir. Okay, it says here, you also mentioned to me earlier that you saw a vehicle drive by. What type of vehicle was that? And you say that I answered, it was a Metro Dade police car.
Correct. That's correct, yes.
Now, let's take a look at that. If I'm supposed to be killing someone and a Metro Dade police car drives by, don't you think that's a little bit weird?
No, because that's a heavily traveled area. But as I asked you in the confession, did the officer look at you? And you said no, he was looking straight ahead. And it's quite a ways across the field to 32nd Avenue to where this happened. And again, we made a concerted effort to try and find out who this was. We pulled every worksheet for that day and the day before to find out what officers worked. We talked to every officer that worked that day, and no one remembered seeing this happening, of course, and almost every one of them during their shift drove down 32nd Avenue. Okay. So we have no indication of who it was. We made every effort, though, to find out.
Okay, page 12. On the top it says letter A. It's supposed to be an answer that you say that I gave, which says, yes, sir, there was a long blood trail from the pavement up to the inside of my house.
Correct.
Okay, did evidence ever prove that there was some type of blood trail?
Well, you also said you used Clorox and rags to clean up the blood trail.
But the question was, sir, was there any evidence to prove that there was a blood trail?
No, you destroyed it by cleaning it.
Okay, so no, there wasn't.
No.
Okay. Okay, page 13 on the top.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm supposed to have said, well, I went back into the blackout scene. I woke up and I caught myself cutting the deceased man. I caught myself cutting him.
Yes, sir.
When I was saying blackout, did you understand that as being unconscious?
Not unconscious, because you were active during the scene. I would say that you just don't recall, is what you're telling me. You're alleging in this statement that you didn't recall that portion of it.
So blackout during the whole course of this confession means I don't recall?
No, you said there were certain portions that you didn't recall, but
right
other
now,
portions you did recall.
Right now, the question is about the blackout, where it says, I'm seeing that throughout the whole confession, the word blackout comes up a lot. So I was wondering what exactly blackout meant to you.
You're asking me what I think?
Yes.
I think you're conveniently not remembering things that you don't want to remember. That's what I think.
That's what it means?
That's what I think it means.
Okay. So some type of memory loss.
Convenient memory loss on your part, yes.
Oh, okay. So during memory loss, do you think that a person could actually, I don't know, let's say kill a man and leave a scene so clean with Clorox and all these things that you're saying, and no witnesses and no evidence and no fingerprints, no sloppiness, just so perfect because he's in this blackout?
Well, as I said, I didn't believe this blackout. I think it was a convenient ploy on your part to try and the Candello stuff, all that was a convenient ploy on your part to try and outsmart the confession, is what I think it was.
So are you insinuating as to that I'm trying to outsmart the confession and using Candello as a way of trying to build an insanity defense at trial?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was thinking.
And am I using an insanity defense?
Did you try? Yes, you did, but it was not allowed.
Am I using an insanity defense at this trial?
Did you try before?
Question.
Yes.
The question is, sir, am I using an insanity defense at this
He
trial?
was not allowed to use it at this trial. You asked me the question, I'm answering it honestly. You
The
tried, but you were not allowed, the judge said no.
The question is, am I or not using an insanity defense now? If I were insane, I would not be representing myself. The judge would never allow that.
Exactly, that's exactly what I just answered.
So am I or not?
I've answered it, no.
Okay. So the whole issue of me using Candelo as a way of trying to get out of this murder case, pretty much really doesn't fit the whole picture here that the confession is trying to establish about
On
me.
the contrary, I think it fits perfectly. I think it fits perfectly. I think it all makes sense.
Okay, so even though you don't know the names of certain people and things, it makes sense to you though? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Okay, here on page 14, it says, on the top, where I'm giving the answer to the first question, it says, all the cutting scene took place in the bathroom when I woke up and realized what was really going on.
Yes, sir.
Okay, when it says woke up, does that mean that I woke up out of this memory loss that you were saying, or does it mean that I woke up out of unconsciousness, or does it mean that I just woke up out of some deep sleep or something?
Well, I think it's self-explanatory that you just woke up and you realized what you were doing.
You mean like realizing, oh my God, this is what I'm... Well, my question is, where did I go? Did I fall asleep? Did I go unconscious? Did I enter memory loss like you said again? Or what actually happened right now?
Well, I've already explained, I think it was convenient memory loss on your part. There are certain portions of this that you're trying to backpedal on, I think, for the purposes later on of entering this insanity defense.
Okay. So right here where it says I woke up and realized what was really going on. So right now I'm waking up out of... I'm just trying to make it clear to the jury and to the court that these phrases like woke up...
Question again?
Huh?
Is that a question that you're asking?
Yes, Your Honor. The question is, where I'm saying that I woke up, that I blacked out,
Yes, sir.
or that I was unconscious. These are things that basically you're saying that means some type of memory loss, right?
They're your words, not mine. You're telling me that you had blackout. I'm not implying that you had a blackout. You're the one that's telling me.
Well, sir, this is supposed to be true, correct?
It's absolutely true. You and I were both there. We know it's true. You know and I know this is true.
Okay, but did the evidence say it was true?
Sure it did.
What part?
Well, for example, right here, you're saying that you were cutting the victim, and you cut the victim on the side of the tub. You showed me the marks on the tub, and we have a picture of it where you cut the fingers off and the thumbs off. You show me where that blade cut through the fingers and the thumbs and made marks on the edge of the tub. That's evidence.
Yeah, but what makes me curious about that is, how did you link any of the knives in my house to cuts that you seen on the bathtub that could have been made by shoes, by sandals, by anything that probably fell on there? How are you so accurately able?
I can't do that. A tool mark expert in our crime lab can do that. I cannot do that.
Okay.
That's not my area of expertise.
So the question again is, do you know the name of this tool expert that did this?
No.
Thank you. Okay, right here, page 15. Where it says, in the middle of the page, where it says, when I woke up. Well, when it says, when I woke up out of my consciousness, out of my conscious once again, which I was coming in and out, I realized what he had done. And then you asked, as you were spraying the victim with the water from the shower, did you do anything else with any soap or detergent? And I answered, no, sir. I ran outside and took his Cadillac. The question is, did you ever find his Cadillac?
No,
Okay.
not that I know of. I mean, it may have been recovered later, but as you know, I retired, so I'm not sure if it's been found since.
Okay, on page 16. Near the top where it says, how did you get back home? The question is, how did you get back home?
You said you walked.
And I said, I walked. Okay, the question is, at this point where I walked, where did I walk from?
From where you dropped the car by that church on 61st Street.
Okay, and do you have proof that I left the car there at that church?
Your statement, your admission, and we had the pastor of the church that said he saw the car there temporarily and then it was gone.
And once again, do you know the name of this pastor?
I'm sure it's in the report. I don't have it now.
I've never heard this name. When you say I walked, okay, at this point, do I have cuts on my body when I walked at this point?
According to your statement, yes.
So you're going to tell me that okay. Yeah, I want to present that. Standby counsel is presenting Defense Exhibit A. Okay, these are the wounds that were open when I walked. From what distance? Could you tell us what distance did I walk with these wounds?
Probably 2.5 miles, maybe 2 miles.
Okay, so I walked 2.5 miles with wounds that exposed my bones somehow.
I guess that's what you told me. I don't know. I didn't see you walking, but that's what you told me you did.
Okay, on page 18. Okay, I'm going to make my point at the end of this confession.
Just so you know, Mr. Walker, you can dismiss the rest of the witnesses from the other two.
I'm sorry, Judge, I didn't hear you.
I told Mr. Walker you can dismiss the rest of his witnesses tomorrow starting at 9.
Okay.
Can I continue?
There's none.
All right. Well, at the middle of the page, of page 18, where it says, well, sir, it says, I had all the body parts inside the tub. I let once again the water run to wash him up with some soap. Then after that, sir, I continued to black out, and then I was caught again inside the scene. It was like Candela was trying to possess me again.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did the evidence ever prove that there was some body or some flesh being cooked in my okay, it says water run. It says that somehow water was running in my house, and what did the evidence prove to show that that actually happened? That this is actually a true statement given by me?
Absolutely it did. I mentioned earlier when we talked about the pictures that the top half of the body had decomposed and the lower half of the body did not. That was very unusual. I'd never seen that before, neither did the ME. This explains why. The hot water, the feet were up in the tub, the hot water used to wash the body had accelerated the decomposition rate. So the hot water caused the upper half to decompose much faster at a faster rate than the lower half of the body. So it's obvious when we look at the body that what you're saying is absolutely true.
Well, you didn't answer the question. The question was.
I just did answer the question. It shows what you're saying is exactly true.
Didn't answer the question, sir. The question was, once again, let me rephrase it. The question is, did you, in fact, find evidence to prove that the body was in my tub with running water? Yes or no?
Ask and answer.
did any of the crime scene, isn't it true that there was nothing in the bathtub of my house to show that the body was in there?
Sure there was. There was the cuts on the side of the tub where you had cut the fingers and the thumbs off. Those are consistent with what you told me about. That's evidence. If you're asking me about evidence, that's evidence.
So you're saying that some scratches on the side of the tub proves that Mr. Argelio was in my tub in my house?
Because you told me that you cut his fingers off there. And also, underneath the tiles, we have pictures of where we pulled up the tiles of the floor. There's blood underneath the tiles.
Okay.
That blood matches Mr. Argelio.
Okay, and
Mr. Gonzalez, I should
could
say.
you tell us the name of the person that took that exam?
Well, the
'Cause that's
blood was recovered
Uh-huh,
by Mr. Charles, Tommy Charles, who was the crime scene expert. I watched him do it.
uh-huh.
And the DNA testing, I don't know who did the testing. That's a separate portion of our police department in the lab, so I don't know.
So once again, for like the 10th time in this trial, you don't know the name of the person that did the DNA exam?
For the 10th time, that's not my area of
Okay.
expertise.
All right. Okay, let's go to page 35.
Okay?
Okay. This is the third question from the top down.
Yes, sir.
The question is, has anyone threatened or coerced you to make this statement? I answer,